Hello friends, as part of this video we are going to discuss about most commonly asking AI integration scenario based interview question and answers. So the first question would be, your company wants to integrate an AI chatbot into an existing ASP.NET Core application for customer support. How would you design the solution? So when we are answering, we have to carefully follow the steps which we are going to discuss. We would start by identifying the chatbot's purpose and scope for customer support. It would likely need to handle FAQs, provide account information, and escalation to a human agent when needed. Based on this, we would choose Azure AI services and bot framework to integrate the chatbot as they work seamlessly with the .NET Core applications. As part of this implementation, we have to follow the below steps while integrating AI chatbot into an existing application. The step 1 would be design the architecture. While designing the architecture, the chatbot would be a separate Azure bot service instance using LUIS or Azure OpenAI for natural language understanding. The ASP.NET Core application would expose APIs for customer data, authentication, and other backend services the bot needs to interact with. Communication between the bot and the app would be secured with OAuth 2.0 or JWT tokens. The second step would be bot development. We would build the bot using the bot framework SDK in .NET. This includes defining dialogues, intents, and triggers for customer queries. For dynamic resources, we would integrate Azure Cognitive Search or a knowledge base built with Q&A Maker. For escalation, we would configure the bot to handle of conversations to a human agent using a service like Omnichannel for customer service. The third step would be integration with the ASP.NET Core app. We would embed the chatbot UI into the app using the web chat control, which is customizable and works out of the box with bot framework. The bot would call backend APIs from the ASP.NET Core app to fetch or update customer data. For example, if a user asks for order status, the bot would query the app's API to retrieve the data. The fourth step would be deployment. We would deploy the bot to Azure App Service for scalability and reliability. The ASP.NET Core and bot would share a common language and monitoring setup using application insights for end-to-end tracking. The fifth and final step would be testing and feedback. We would test the bot using bot framework emulator and deploy it to a staging environment for user feedback. Based on feedback, we would refine the intents, responses, and escalation logic. This setup ensures a modular, scalable, and secure integration while leveraging Azure AI capabilities for intelligent customer support. This is how we have to implement or integrate an AI chatbot into an existing ASP.NET Core application. Now, the next question would be, suppose AI service APIs become slow or unavailable, how would you handle failures in production? If the AI service APIs become slow or unavailable in production, we would first set up circuit breaker and timeouts in the application to handle such failures gracefully. For example, if the API is slow, the circuit breaker would stop further requests temporarily and fallback logic would kick in, like serving cached responses or default messages. For unavailability, we would use retry mechanisms with exponential backups to avoid hammering the service. If retries fail, we would log the issue and trigger alerts through monitoring tools like Azure Monitor or Application Insights so the team can investigate. If the service is critical, we would implement failover mechanisms like switching to a backup AI service or a degraded mode where the system continues to function with limited features. For example, if a chatbot relies on the AI API, we could switch to a simpler rule-based fallback temporarily. Finally, we would analyze logs and metrics to identify patterns causing the slowdown or downtime and work with the service provider to resolve the root cause. So the next question would be, how do you secure AI integrations when sensitive enterprise data is involved? We start by ensuring data encryption both in transit and at rest using protocols like DLS and AES 256. For AI integrations, we implement role-based access control (RBAC) and API keys to restrict access to the AI services. Sensitive data is often anonymized or tokenized before being sent to the AI model, especially when working with external APIs like Azure AI services. For models hosted in the cloud, we configure private endpoints and virtual networks to ensure traffic doesn't leave the internal network. We also enforce data retention policies to prevent the AI services from storing sensitive information longer than needed. Additionally, we monitor and log all the requests using Azure Monitor or similar tools to detect unauthorized access or anomalies. Finally, we conduct regular security reviews and penetration testing to identify vulnerabilities and ensure compliance with the regulations like GDPR or HIPAA, depending on the domain. The next commonly question would be, your organization receives thousands of PDF invoices daily. How would you automate processing using AI? We would build an AI powered pipeline to extract, validate, and process data from the invoices. First, we would use Azure Form Recognizer or Tezzard OCR to extract text from the PDFs, including structured fields like invoice numbers, dates, line items, and totals. For unstructured layouts, we would train a custom model using labeled examples to improve accuracy. Next, we would validate the extracted data against business rules, for example, checking if the invoice total matches the sum of the line items or if the vendor is in an approved list. We would use Azure Logic Apps or a custom .NET microservice for this validation step. For storage and processing, we would push the cleaned data into a SQL database or Azure Cosmos DB, depending on the scale and query patterns. Then we would trigger downstream workflows like payment approvals using Azure Functions or event grids. Finally, we would integrate monitoring and error handling. Failed extractions would go into a queue for manual review, and we would use application insights to track pipeline performance. This approach ensures scalability and minimizes human intervention. The final question would be, users complain that AI responses are inaccurate. How would you improve response quality? We would start by analyzing the complaints to identify patterns. Are the inaccurate due to outdated data, lack of context, or misinterpretation of queries. Based on that, we would improve the training data by including more domain-specific, up-to-date, and diverse examples. We would also refine the prompt engineering to guide the model towards more accurate and context-aware responses. For real-time improvements, we would implement feedback loops where user corrections are logged and use it to fine tune the model. Adding confidence scores to responses could help users gauge reliability, and we would integrate fallback mechanisms like escalating unclear queries to human support or providing references for verification. Finally, we would monitor performance metrics like accuracy and user satisfaction to measure progress and iterate. Thank you, friends. Please follow my channel for more technical and practical videos. Thank you.